Hey y'all, welcome to season 2 of the Tears and Joy podcast. I'm your host, Julia Light, and I am so glad you're here. Last season on the show, I interviewed 15 leaders, dreamers, and trailblazers who are doing incredible things in the world while navigating life in their 20s with honesty and joy. This season is all about living deeply, getting vision, and shaping culture right where you are. So, we're talking to more people who are doing just that. Everyone you'll hear from on this season is in the next season of life, so out of their 20s, from founders to artists to CEOs, and we're asking the real questions about early career days and how they built a life and a career that they love, learning to dream big and be present even in the messy middles so we can all do the same. Let's jump in. Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited today to be joined by Dr. Erin Wilson. Hi.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here with you. I can't wait for us to chat.
I know, me too. I have so much to ask you. I'm going to read Dr. Erin's bio so that y'all can hear about who this amazing woman is before we jump into the conversation. Dr. Erin Wilson is on a mission to transform the way leaders and teams thrive by integrating relationship intelligence, strategic rest, and intentional leadership. As the CEO of Design Ideal Consulting, she has spent over a decade designing transformative team building experiences for organizations worldwide. A certified expert in core strengths, the 5 behaviors, and everything DISC, Erin equips teams with the tools to communicate, collaborate, and lead with impact. She's also the co-founder of the Strategic Rest Summit and co-author of Strategic Rest in Leadership, challenging the hustle mindset and helping leaders cultivate clarity, resilience, and creativity. As the co-host of the Power Nap live show, she dives into the intersection of rest, leadership, and innovation. Amazing! Thank you so much for being here.
I could not be more excited to be here. We have a very special connection, and I'm sure you'll talk about that a little bit later. But just to always see students who have been a part of the work that you do be doing some amazing things just always warms my heart. So I could not be more excited to be here.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Erin and I met when you were working at TCU, and you
That's
were
right.
the director of first year experience, senior director?
That's right, senior director of first year experience. That's right.
Yes, which TCU's, I'm sure I've talked about it on the podcast at some point, but TCU's first year experience programs are top notch. They're the absolute best for incoming students. And that was one of the most impactful things I did in college, was to be on the director board, the student leadership board of Frog Camp, which is the extended orientation program that TCU offers. And so that's how I know Dr. Erin, which is amazing. And just so fun to be doing this together now. So Dr. Erin, I would love to ask you, in this current season of life, what are you up to? Design Ideal Consulting, you've been doing this full time for a couple years now.
Yeah.
And just tell us about your business and what you're doing.
Absolutely. So so technically this is my first year of full-time entrepreneurship. So I've actually owned my consulting firm for about 5 years now.
Okay.
And as I've done training and development for other people and did all kind of stuff, worked in higher education, but all of the work that I've done throughout my career has really centered around adult learning. Even sometimes when I didn't think it did, I would always find spaces to be the person who was given the presentation or developing the curriculum or helping people learn how to do something. And so to see that develop into a really great career and now business ownership and keynotes and all of these different things is just such an amazing thing to see. So Design Ideal Consulting is my consulting firm where I get to work with corporations, with cities, with universities, really just about anyone who has a team across the globe that's interested in team building, specifically around relationship intelligence and strengths-based leadership. And so I really, really have a good time getting teams to be their best and to really ultimately get the results that they want.
I love that. That's amazing. So teams is your big thing, because you said you have a lot of background in different sorts of adult education, but teams is, how did you discover that was your favorite thing or what you really wanted to work on?
You know what? I figured that out really quickly by being a supervisor,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So I'm someone who's I like to think a really good independent contributor, but I also can be a really good part of a team, right?
Mm,
So as a leader, I started to understand the power of what it looks like, not just to be the independent, like even when you have strong independent contributors, that
right.
doesn't allow for you to have the collaboration and all of the pieces that you need to have a strong team, right? I've worked with people who have been fantastic when they're just doing things on their own, but when you need to pull them together cohesively to really make something happen, to meet a goal, to meet the mission of the organization, they really lack the ability to be able to use relationship intelligence in order to identify like how to work together, right? And
Okay.
there's key components of relationship intelligence that helps people really make sure that they're being really good teams. The first one is understanding that we're motivated differently from other people, right?
Okay, yeah.
Humans tend to be motivated in three different ways, or a blend of three ways.
Can
One
you tell us
is
them? Yeah.
I can't. I'm
I'm
gonna
like,
tell you some.
"Oh, I'm
Let
so
me tell you
excited
some
to hear."
secrets, right?
Yes,
So the
please.
first way is by people, right? So
Okay.
some people are motivated by a high blend of people. Okay, some people are motivated by a high blend of performance. Some people are motivated by a high blend of process. Okay, so we
Oh,
walk through the world with people who are motivated by a blend of all three of those, but some people have a much higher blend in one of those areas than the others, right?
okay.
And then there's some, of course, like there's some blends that go together. So I'm someone who's motivated by kind of an equal um performance and process. So those two go together to
Mhm.
create something. When you're thinking about this is actually through an assessment called Core Strengths.
Okay.
Total SDI is a fantastic assessment if someone's looking for a good assessment to know more about themselves, not just for
Yeah.
job interviews, but how you interact with people through relationship intelligence. Let me know. I'm always happy to do that assessment for people.
Okay, yeah.
But why it matters that we understand how we're motivated is because language matters, right? So let's say that you're super motivated by people, okay? Which my guess is someone who has a podcast who's trying to
I
share
think that I
stories.
am, yes.
I would imagine that if you took that assessment, we would find that you're highly motivated by people, right?
Yes.
That's very different from me. But if I was trying to convince you to do something, Julia, I would talk about how it would impact people, right? So I would
Okay,
say we
yeah.
really want to do this experience, or your podcast would be even better if this listening experience was happening for these people, right?
Mhm,
And you would go,
mhm.
okay, yeah, let's talk about how that would work. Now, here's the thing. I am not motivated by people. My people motivation percentage is literally like 1%. Okay.
Wow.
So people don't move me in any capacity. That tends to shake people a little bit because they go, well, you're super like outgoing and you present incredibly introverted. So how are you not motivated by people? But I am not. If you wanted to convince me about something, you would need to tell me a little bit about how it would be a great challenge for us, how it would make us the best. This is going to make our podcast the best,
And
right?
is that
People are
performance? That's the performance aspect?
Absolutely. That's the
Okay.
performance aspect for sure. And so you see how those two things are very different. And often we
Yes.
forget as we navigate spaces with other people and they're motivated differently, that if we only talk to ourselves, kind of like love languages, right? We
Yeah,
tend to
very
make the
similar.
mistake of loving people the way we like to be loved.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Most people don't realize that. That's typically what you default to. If
Right.
whatever your love language is, you tend to do that first, which is why it's important to know what your partner's love language is, so that you kind of push yourself, especially if that's not a shared love language, to do that. So my
Right.
husband's love language is acts of service, right?
Mhm.
So he does so many acts of service for me. If whenever he goes out of town, I literally forget I need to get gas, or it could even be these things. I don't even know where
Yeah.
my gas tank is because acts of service is his, right? Um, but for me, it's gifts. So I'm always giving gifts, and I have to remember acts of service is how he's really going to see that I love him. So
Yeah.
if the trash is full, then this time maybe I'll take it out to surprise him, right?
Right.
It's those
Yeah.
little things. So we forget that kind of stuff when we think about relationship intelligence, and we start
Mhm.
to kind of talk to people how we want to be, how we're motivated, instead of seeking to understand how that person's motivated and then using our
Yes.
language to help them see things our way.
Okay, that's really helpful. And do you see that primarily from supervisors to team members they're supervising, like trying to motivate them to excel in their work, or is it also peer to peer?
That's a really great question. And that's one that people ask me all the time because I work with teams. So,
Mhm.
no, it's incredibly important for both sides to really understand how they're motivated. It is incredibly helpful when you're someone's supervisor. Matter of fact, one of my greatest triumph stories as a supervisor was really way back in 2019 when I first became aware of this assessment. I
Okay.
was supervising somebody who was highly motivated by people, like we just talked about.
Mhm.
I just talked about how I am not motivated at all by people. So every one of our conversations that I would have with her would be around how this is going to make us the best. This is going to make TCU the best. Everybody's going to be trying to figure out how
Mm.
our department did this. And for her,
She's like, "I
her
don't care."
she just didn't get it,
Yeah,
right?
I think the older I get, some things it's really like some things we just don't care about. I don't know if that plays in, thinking about what motivates you is so important because you can't really force yourself to care about performance if you're people oriented, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's why it matters, because any conversation can be had. You just need to look at it through a different lens. So once I
Mm,
started to understand she was motivated way differently from me, this is when I became acquainted with this assessment and this work and
cool.
became a partner of Core Strengths at the time. They're owned
Uh-huh.
by Crucial Conversations now.
Cool.
But whatever the case is, at the time I became a partner, I started to go, wait, let me see if this is just we don't it's not that we don't see eye to eye, it's that we just aren't motivated the same way.
Yeah.
So then I started to have conversations with her in our one-on-ones about how this would impact students, right? I stopped
Mm,
talking about, oh man, this school is going to be trying to figure out this process matters because of this. I started to just really ask her questions about how students were impacted by it, how students would be impacted later.
yeah.
Did they enjoy it? What are these different pieces? And then sneaking in, of course, the metrics that I needed in order to do my
Right. That's
job.
also important. Yeah.
But it took this employee from someone who I really didn't enjoy working with and had a whole meeting going like, I don't enjoy working with you. We're going to have to figure out where we're
Mhm.
going from here, to now being someone who still reaches out, and like I just have seen her career grow so much, and her reaching back out going, man, us turning the page and me learning so
Wow.
much from you really made all the difference in my career now. And so
Wow.
yes, emotional intelligence is incredibly important, but there are people who are emotionally intelligent who don't know how to actionably use that, and that to me is
Yeah.
where relationship intelligence comes in, right?
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
For
So,
sure.
okay, you explained
Mhm.
performance and people
Mhm.
orientation. What is an example of someone
Yeah.
who would be process oriented?
Absolutely. My process folks, which I said I've got a blend of that too, but my process folks really are all about make it make sense. Okay?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
does this make sense? Like, what is happening? They're going to ask a lot of questions, right? Oftentimes, people who are motivated by process tend to enjoy being those independent contributors. They like to
Mhm.
have time to think about what's happening and really are going to want to deeply understand what the process of something is,
Okay.
in order to make it happen, right? So if I was having a conversation with someone who's highly process motivated, I would talk to them again spoiler alert, right? About the
Mm-hmm.
process, okay?
Yes.
I wouldn't be talking to them about did this number of students like enjoy it, or how was the feelings there. I wouldn't talk as much about that,
Okay.
but mostly about the exact process that happened. Like, what are the protocols, right? Like, did we make sure that the data that we were trying to get to, did we reach those numbers? Different pieces
Got
like
it.
that that have to
Yeah.
do with process. So you would also, if you're convincing a person who's motivated by process, you want to come with like actionable information about what's happening
Yeah.
versus, again, different conversation that you would have with the person who's motivated by people and then by
Right.
performance, right?
Yeah. So good. Yeah, this is really, really helpful stuff to be
Yeah.
thinking about because even I'm sure everybody has in their workplace someone they may be just like, I don't understand this person. And it's like, oh, well, maybe they have different motivations than you. That's so helpful.
Absolutely. That's 100% what most people find out after they do this. They go, oh my goodness. Especially that assessment that I do with a lot of the teams, because you don't just find out about how you're motivated, you also find out how you experience conflict. And that
Oh,
is a big deal. Okay.
yes.
So before I even understood how I experienced conflict, before I, of course, became a partner with Core Strengths and took this
Mm-hmm.
assessment and started to use it for people, I had no idea people experienced conflict different from me. Okay. So
Okay.
I'll give you an example of that.
Yes, please.
So my husband and I experience conflict differently, right? So as humans, we experience conflict in three different stages. Okay.
Okay.
So in your first stage, according to Core Strengths, right, you experience where you're thinking about yourself, the problem, and other people. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If the conflict continues, then something drops out of it. Other people, right? In the
Mm,
second
interesting.
stage, you're no longer thinking about what's going on with the other person. You're thinking about the problem and you're thinking about yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you continue to get pushed into your third stage of conflict, then something else drops out. And now this time, it's the other thing. You're literally only thinking about yourself in order to get
Wow.
back to when things go well, which is how you're motivated. Isn't that wild?
That's very interesting.
Yes. So imagine talking about this with groups and how they leave with all these light bulbs on, because it's
Yeah.
even deeper than that. We as humans actually experience conflict in 13 different ways.
Wow.
13, right?
That is a lot. Yeah.
So for me, when I experience conflict, my first stage is straight up assert. Okay, so if you're like, "Hey, Erin, what do you want for dinner tonight?" or you're like, "Hey, we're gonna have pizza for dinner tonight." If I don't want pizza, I clearly just go, "I don't want pizza. No, thank you. Let's do something else." Right?
Yeah.
For other people, that would be so foreign to like straight up
Yeah.
just tell
You're
someone
like,
what you're
"Oh,
not gonna do.
sure." Yeah.
That's wild. Like, what do you mean? You
Yeah.
just tell people, right? And that's because for other people, we experience, we experience another blend, kind of like we do with our motivation. But
Mhm.
there are people who assert, right? There are people who accommodate. And then there are people who experience analyze when they're in conflict. Okay.
Mm. So
Right.
those are kind of the 3 umbrella terms.
Those three blends again. That
Okay.
right. That's right. Exactly
Assert,
just like that.
accommodate, experience, analyze.
That's right. So accommodate, analyze, and assert.
Okay.
Okay. So for me, assert is first. That's why I told you, nope, I'm not going to eat pizza for dinner. Right. It's usually because I'm a Southern girl. It's very cute and smiley. It's usually with
Uh-huh.
laughs. But I immediately, in every conflict I'm in, assert, no matter
Uh-huh.
what it is. Okay. So for someone who is accommodate their first stage, they may go, okay, whatever you want, right? Sure. Okay, you want pizza? That sounds good.
Yeah.
Someone who analyzes may go, well, we had pizza on Tuesday. Like, are you sure that we want to do pizza again? Right?
Uh-huh.
But for every situation, we typically do that. So let me tell you why it matters to even know how you see conflict. Because for me, in every situation of conflict I've ever been in before I started to be a practitioner of understanding conflict and, of course, becoming an expert through using assessments and working with teams, I thought that if someone did not assert, they were not experiencing conflict.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that does for your relationships? That you
Right.
may literally be in opposition or conflict with someone, but if they are not asserting,
You don't
how would
know.
I?
Yeah. Mhm.
Right? So it's important now that I know that people experience it differently, right? And even
Yes.
better if you're a manager of a team, or even
Right.
oftentimes I see a lot of couples come to me. I had someone just email me today going, "You did this session with me a year ago with my team, and I've used it so much that what would it cost to have my husband do?"
Oh, that's great. Yes, that's so great. Well, I've told you, haven't I, that my mom's an executive coach. So she's got like very different certifications than you, but I feel like the whole way we grew up was like we did our Clifton strengths. Like we like it's our it was like so part of our family culture. So I totally agree. This stuff is so helpful for work, but also friendships too. And
It
I've even seen that in
is.
friendships where I haven't done this assessment, but I would probably tend towards assert a little bit more than a lot of other women my age, and then learning that in friendships of like, oh, you actually do have a different opinion than me. You're just not going to say it right away, so I need to ask you and not just be like, great,
Absolutely.
moving on my way, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it also helps us keep relationships better because our first stage of
Yes.
conflict, remember I told you, we're thinking about ourselves, the other person, and the problem in that stage. So it's
Mhm.
our best case scenario in order to keep our relationship positive, right?
Right.
So not only does it matter that we know how other people are motivated, because I don't expect people to know how everyone around them in the world is
No.
motivated.
Yeah.
But one of the things that it really helps us do is understand how we experience conflict. When I start to see myself assert, I start to ask myself a question: what's going on here? What kind of
Mm.
conflict am I experiencing? Which
Yeah.
allows me to take a step back and then be able to really keep it in that first stage. So I'm able to keep that relationship positive.
Oh,
So
I love that.
it's
Yeah.
even more for you than it is for other people.
That's so good. Wow. Okay, this is very helpful insights on conflict, which I think is huge in all areas of life, and learning how to do conflict well is just so key. I remember one of my really good friends, who's also kind of like a big sister to me, asked me when I was like a sophomore in college. She was like, "Have you and your friends had any really good conflict?" She was like, "It's just so growing for a friendship," and I totally agree. Now, still being friends with all those people I was talking about. But okay, so we've talked about conflict motivation. This is all so helpful. Thank you for sharing
Yep,
your amazing wisdom with us.
of
You
course.
clearly light up when you talk about the work that you're doing, and you're doing such impactful work. It's so aligned with everything that, is you and the things that you have learned over the years of your career and the things that you want to carry forth and the impact you want to make to teams and people in the world. I would love for us to hear now like a 5-minute origin story of kind of your career, because like you said, you weren't always a full-time entrepreneur, and you have had a ton of cool experience. You've gotten your doctorate degree. So I would love to hear, yeah, just how this came to be through your career journey, and yeah, what brought you to this thriving career that you're in now.
Wow, that my goodness, 5 minutes is a short time. No, I'm just
You
kidding.
can go a little
I know,
over.
I promise that I won't. But I'll tell you kind of some of the key moments that were incredibly important
Yeah,
to
please
where I
do.
am now. One of the first ones was really one of my. I want to say one of my second biggest moments of self awareness that I talk about, like when I'm doing keynote speeches or when I'm talking to people about pivotal moments. You know how people are always talking about core memories now, if that makes sense?
Yes, yes.
This one for me is such a core memory. So in college, I had just finished. I was a student body president at the time, and it was probably around this time of year in April.
Mhm.
So you pass the gavel to somebody else, and you're finally like at a space where you're just kind of like next steps, right? All of the things around you have quieted a little bit because the semester is coming to the end. And one of the big pieces was me finally having time to think to myself whether or not I really wanted to go to law school or if my parents had just told me my whole life I was going to law school, right?
Mm.
So in order to not get in trouble with my parents, I decided that I was going to like go and take a break to get an MBA. Okay, like to let you know how serious our parents were about
Yeah.
education, that my break from
Just a
law
little
school was
break.
like,
Get a little
I'm gonna go get
MBA.
an MBA
Yeah.
first. It'll make me even more like marketable, Dad. Don't worry. I'm
Wow.
still doing what you asked me to do.
Yeah.
Well, while I was in graduate school getting that MBA, I statistics was kicking my butt. Okay, it was just kicking my butt, and I wanted to take a class that I thought would be an easier class. And so at Murray State in Kentucky, there was a class on grant writing. It was like a nonprofit class, and we had the amazing opportunity. I have no idea why he was there, but he was just absolutely amazing. We had a visiting professor at the time, and I think after that he decided to stay, but this was his first year there. We had a visiting professor who had been previously the vice president at the Kellogg Foundation. Right, so
Okay.
he really knew his stuff about
Yes.
nonprofit. It was really cool, and at the time, 21-year-old, 22-year-old Erin just didn't even realize how cool that was, that we had
Yeah.
Bob Long as a visiting professor. Whatever the case is, I took his class, and there were two big things. The first one he introduced me to was self-awareness. That was the first time that I ever took Clifton Strengths to kind of know
Yes. So
positive
good.
psychology, and that I
Uh-huh.
could focus on the things that I do incredibly strong and build a career on that, right?
Yes.
I talk about this quite often with high school students that I do work with and early college students, because it's so different than what we're taught, right? We're taught
Mm.
that we're supposed to holistically try to be good at everything so that
Right.
we can continue to move forward, when really some of the most successful people have really honed in on what they do best and leaned into those things in order to
Yeah.
create their career. I'm a product
Yes.
of that, right? So that was incredibly important to me. And in that class, I got my first grant funded, but also
Cool.
learned, I know, right?
That's awesome.
So so much about how to lean into who I was and what my strengths were in order to build who I wanted to be in the life I wanted to be. So I really took that into nonprofit for a little while. I actually worked in
Okay.
healthcare at Arkansas Children's Hospital for a little bit
Oh,
and
wow.
worked with patients. And so that was really, really cool getting to do that. But that led me through a volunteer experience into nonprofit, which is where I super wanted to be, to ask people for their money
Yep.
because I wanted their money to do great things in the
Yeah.
world. So I did development for a nonprofit, Arkansas Food Bank, for a little while, and then I moved over to the client side. Really, so at food banks, you have people who build pantries, right? So oftentimes people think about the food bank as being the place that people get food, and that's really not the truth. The people who get food from food banks are actually food pantries that are in communities that give
Right.
food out to people who need it, right? Or are experiencing hunger. And so
Mhm.
it was my job to teach pantries how to open, right, but also to do
Cool.
training with pantry
Mm.
folks that worked at pantries, and development stuff with them around food safety and around team building and learning, which blows my
Wow.
mind when I think about that.
Yeah.
But so that was a place that I really got kind of my first taste of being able to really present like cool concepts to people and have them learn. So that of course took me back into higher ed, because I missed higher education. I missed being on a college campus. And so I got a
Mhm.
really cool opportunity to go back into housing, which is residence life for people who don't know.
Yes.
That took me to TCU, where I got the opportunity to kind of move and really do work in co-curricular learning for students, because we know so much of the learning happens outside of the classroom too. I've been a
Yes.
professor, so I'll say it does happen inside the classroom,
Yes.
but so much of our really good learning that happens also happens outside of the classroom.
Oh,
So
totally.
I was a student affairs practitioner and really made sure that we
Mhm.
created opportunities for students to learn.
Which
That
you did
took
an
me
excellent job. I was a student when you were doing that, which we talked about earlier. But yeah, I
okay.
truly feel like from TCU, they emphasize that so well. Like you were learning so much outside of the classroom. And I kind of feel like I got a whole different degree from all my leadership roles. because I was a musical theater major, but, there's, like, organizational leadership and project management and training, facilitating, all these things that I learned,
Absolutely.
with no business
That's
classes whatsoever. Yeah.
That's why you have to do the stuff that's co-curricular, because that's
Yeah,
actually the stuff that helps you really get the job afterwards. Like, yes, you have the degree and you're showing that you have knowledge about a certain area, but when
right.
you do those experiences like you did with like Frog Can't Be an Executive Director, and listen, these folks are working, okay? Like full time. We put these students to work, okay?
Yeah.
They are helping figure out curriculum. They are coming up with itineraries. They are training
Mhm.
other people. So it really is a full time job in a limited
Yes.
amount of space. So when you leave, you're able to talk about all those experiences that you had, which is to me why college is important, right? It's
Yes.
not just the stuff that you learn in the classroom, it's how
Yeah.
you apply it outside. That's the stuff that convinces people to be able to hire you, right? And
I
to let
totally
them know that
agree.
you're competent in all of those things that we try to
Yes.
teach you.
And it teaches you just, yeah, so many different things than if you only were involved in your major. Okay, so you're working at TCU,
Absolutely.
doing a fantastic job.
That's
Yeah, okay,
right.
so you
You know,
started in
TCU is
refuge,
always going
like
to take
it's always gonna
TCU is
what?
always going to take us on a little turn. I
A
love
little
that.
turn, we
TCU is
just
always
love
going to
it.
make
Yeah.
us veer off. But that's okay. So I
Mhm.
was at TCU, of
Mhm.
course, working there, and that actually led me to doing learning and development for Marriott International. So most
Okay.
people say Marriott, or lots of, I don't want to say most people, but lots of people, especially in the South,
I
like to
thought it
go
was
Marriott.
Marriott.
See?
It's
So they
Marriott?
actually, it's Marriott. Yeah, they actually
Marriott.
pronounce their name like Marriott. Exactly. The way I
Oh.
always remembered it is how some person told me, was like, if you love it, you'll marry
Yes, I was
it.
just thinking the same thing. That's hilarious.
This guy named Drew, who was one of the general managers at one of the hotels that I oversaw training and development for, that's how he taught me to remember to always say Marriott. He was like, if
Marriott.
you love it, you'll marry it. Exactly. And
That's
so
great.
so I got to oversee training and development for three Marriott hotels. They were all Renaissance brand hotels, which were premium.
Yeah.
And I just loved getting the opportunity to do that. For two reasons. Number one, half of the learning and development stuff that I would work on was, of course, leadership training for managers who were at
Yes.
those hotels, right? But the second piece that I absolutely loved doing was onboarding, right? So I wouldn't do their onboarding
Mm.
process, but I would do their orientation session, and we would have a fantastic time
Yes, I bet.
every time we would do those. But it would really open up people to learning, to some folks who didn't really see learning as a part of what their experience could be. I would have
Mm.
people coming back all the time going like, when can I come back to your next class? What can I do, like, in
Oh,
order to learn
yeah.
something else? And I've had so many people that did just even those small intro classes with me, where I would help them understand this is learning, like you can enjoy learning, that would go, I went back and like got my like GED because we did this, or like I'm in
Wow.
like a manager program because you made learning fun for me. And
Oh,
so
that's amazing.
absolutely. So I wanted that feeling forever. And so that's
Mhm.
what really, alongside that, I would get more and more clients who wanted me to come in to do engaging and fun training and development sessions that didn't just have people sitting and listening all day, but moving around, really thinking and applying concepts. And so I was like, I do that all the time. So how do I do that to continue to find joy and purpose in the
Yeah.
work that I do? And so that led me to having to decide, do I like keep trying to use my time off to work with clients, or do I just
Mm.
make this jump? And I have an incredibly supportive partner. My husband was like, let's bet on you, like you can do this, I've
Oh,
got you, I've got
yes.
you financially, I've got you emotionally, all the things that you need to do this. So why not, right? And so I started to
Yeah.
go, yeah, why not? And it has been one of the most amazing roller coaster rides of my life, but I'm so glad that I did it.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow. Thank
yeah,
you for sharing your story, and yeah, I love
absolutely.
obviously, looking back now, you can see the ways, and you've even highlighted them, the ways that the things you're doing now, the things that you decided, like, these are really what I want to hone in. You
Yeah,
saw those in so many different roles that you had in the
absolutely.
past, which is so cool. And I even think that that's something I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Like for, those listening who might be earlier in their career, I've done some work like that, just even journaling, reflecting, like, these are the things that I really loved about Frog Camp, and this is something I really loved about this role. Almost trying to map, like, imagine myself at your place, and think back to, like, okay, these are the things that are really sticking out, so maybe this is what I should hone in on more. Would you recommend that to people early in their career?
Absolutely. Really think about the things that make you light up, right? So for
Yeah.
me, it doesn't matter. And I always laugh because I promise, I don't know, it may not be for everybody else, but I promise I turned 30 and my back was like, girl, you pop, locked, and dropped too much in college. And
Oh,
so now we
no.
are not here. No. So I definitely think about that each time that I have to like stand up for hours to do a facilitation. But what makes me know I love it is that it doesn't matter if it's a 4 minute presentation or an 8 hour facilitation.
Mhm.
I am just having the best time. Afterwards, I might
Wow.
have to ice
Yeah.
something, but while I'm doing it, time just doesn't exist to me. And so,
Yeah.
even in those small moments, whatever it is that you do at work, if there's moments where you feel like time flies, look to
Mm.
see how you can do more of that. What is the next role that gets you even closer to more of those times, right? Until your entire job, for the most part, is
Yes.
doing that. And that's where I am. That's literally what I continue to do. Is
Yes.
every job that would give me the opportunity to facilitate content for people, to help them see learning as fun, I would just look for new job, new job, new job that
Yes.
got me a higher percentage of being able to do that until now it's, well, as an entrepreneur, you do a lot of
You have to wear a lot of
contracts
hats,
and
but
paperwork.
yeah.
Yes. But for the most part, I get the opportunity to do the fun stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love this. That is really, really, really helpful wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay, I would love for you to tell us about your book because you wrote a book called Strategic Rest and Leadership, and I would love for you to tell us about what that book is about. What have you learned about strategic rest? And yeah, I mean, I don't even feel like that's not something that I've heard of a whole lot until I saw you start posting your amazing posts about it on LinkedIn. So please tell us about
Well,
strategic
first,
rest and leadership.
yeah, well, first of all, that makes me so happy that that is exactly what it was, because I wasn't seeing tons of people talk about how to battle hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and especially I know you can resonate this with this as someone who went to TCU, right?
Mhm.
Most of the college students, matter of fact, so much of the work that we did as higher ed professionals was really to help make sure that there were spaces for students to understand that even in the busy, even trying to like, do this successful and grasp every opportunity, you still got to take care of yourself mentally, physically,
Yes.
emotionally, right?
Yes.
So here's the thing though, a lot of times people don't hear that in college. They hear I've got to be doing everything because that's where success comes in, right? That's where the
Yeah.
success. If I work hard enough, then something will come to me. If I'm the
Yeah.
last person to leave the office, even though I'm, new to my career, then people will recognize and do all of these different things.
Yeah.
But what I found is that, sure, that has helped a few people, but oftentimes you end up having jaded people who stayed late, did all of the things, and still don't have any of the things that they thought they now deserve, right?
Okay.
Because they did all of these different things. And so for me, one of the big pieces that I really had to grapple with. So, especially after experience a stress-induced seizure when I turned
Yeah.
30,
Oh,
I started to go, I have to change something, right?
yeah.
Even though I'm moving up my corporate or career ladder, I I can't continue to do it if I'm not like my best, right? So
Yeah.
even back then, that's where the idea of strategic rest started to kind of resonate with me, right? That
Mhm.
I am still valuable even when I'm not portraying this overworked woman who has it all, right? And I talk
Yes.
about that in the book with my co-author, Dr. Kelly Dixon. We wrote this together because it really became a conversation that we were starting to have with each other
Mm.
once a month in our little mastermind meetings,
Oh, love
that
that.
we needed to understand how to weave rest into the work we were doing. But then we started to figure out that it was the rest that was allowing us to do even more than what other people around us were doing, right?
Wow, yeah.
We were people that people would always kind of go, man, you're always doing so much. And I would tell people it's really because I'm intentional about when I rest. I'm intentional about where I spend my energy, where I put my energy, where I go. And then we really develop that into a framework. So it's called the NAP framework. In our book, Strategic Rest in Leadership, you can get it
Uh-huh.
anywhere, Amazon, any of
Yes,
those
I will
different
link it.
things.
Yeah.
Perfect. But in that, we developed the NAP framework, which is so cute to me because it's
That is
about
it's a
rest,
nap,
right?
it's a rest, that's cute, yeah.
And so, as you're thinking about how to be a practitioner of strategic rest, it's important to
Mm.
understand three things, right? The NAP framework, which is nurture, which is for N, right? So, how you're nurturing both yourself, but also the communities that you're a part of. Are you using development and learning as a part of rest? Because oftentimes when people think about rest in in conversations, it's about sleep, right?
Yeah,
And in our book, we talk about how rest is more than just sleeping. You really can feel rested even in activity. When I'm
yeah.
learning something new that I'm excited about, it re energizes me, right?
Mhm.
When I have a good conversation with some of my good friends and we're having a good old time, you leave energized, right? So,
Yeah.
how do you use those pieces also in the conversation around strategic rest? That's exactly what that is, right? So, you've got nurture, and all of this is in the book. So, feel free to get a little deeper into that. A is for assess, right? Oftentimes, we're caught up in that hustle culture, feeling exhausted and not really understanding where we should be and where we should be dedicating our energy to, because we're really not taking the time to assess what are the things that we need to be applying this energy to, right?
Okay, yeah.
Finally, after you do that assessment, it's important to really understand how to prioritize, right? So that's what the P is for. And we kind of walk you through how to prioritize, how to spend 21 days to really like hone into that.
Oh,
Our book
cool.
also includes an assessment so you can understand like what are the spaces of the NAP framework that you need to be honing in on. So it's a really, really cool space. But the biggest piece to me was, like I said, I really started to see more people just like me who felt like busy is what
Yeah.
was important. But then I started to look around me and see really successful people who were rested. One of my favorite
Mm.
supervisors ever. I think I told you this before,
You did.
but listen, this lady would take her PTO, and the office did not fall apart while she was gone. She would make sure to hire people who were experts at what they did. So when she
Mm.
was gone, sometimes for weeks, 2 weeks, a month at a time, she would not worry about what was happening in the office because, and
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing for good
Mhm.
leaders, you shouldn't have to be standing over people. You should be hiring experts or people who do what they do well. But I'll
Right.
leave that leadership conversation for another time, or you can find me and I'm happy to have that conversation with you.
Yes.
But whatever the case is, really good leaders also prioritize rest. So we never felt
Mm.
like it was a negative for us to take our time off, for us to come back rested, for us
Ooh,
to
yeah.
look for spaces of joy in the office, to enjoy our lunch, right? And so the more I saw people like her who were at the top of their field, the more I started to look around for folks like that. And I would start to see that ultimately lots of people who have a lot of money they have tons of time for rest, right? That's what they
Yeah.
worked towards, is convenience and rest. So how come we are not figuring out ways in order to make strategic rest a part of the work we do so that we are more productive?
Yes. Okay, this is so interesting. And do you think
Mhm,
that what you were sharing earlier too about
mhm.
honing in more and more on the things that you are really naturally good at and the things that make you come alive, does that play into, maybe not spending that time spinning your wheels, banging your head against the wall, trying to do tasks that you just can't do, and instead spending that time resting so that you can,
Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely, because how else do you get to think about the things that you enjoy except for if you ever rest, right?
right.
If you're always moving,
Yeah.
you don't have time to be creative. You don't have
Mhm.
time to really think about the things that bring you joy or that your purpose and your
Yeah.
purpose work, your calling, as I like to say, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So when you don't take strategic rest, when you don't find the moments to kind of be quiet and sit still. And like I said, not every moment of strategic rest is sitting still. Matter of fact, you find in the book that there are so many other ways. But when I'm having fun or when I'm learning or when I'm in my creative side or my creative bag, as I like to say, right? I, I really start to be able to think about other things. So many pieces of my business, my book, so many things that I have created have been out of moments of me stepping away from work and really taking time to rest. And then I come back recharged
Yes.
and better than ever and knock out something that if I had just tried to mush through, I wouldn't have been able to get it done to me at the same capacity
Yes.
or creativity that I would have been if I didn't harness rest as a part of my strategy.
I love this. It's so good, and I've heard such similar things in my work with creativity as well, and the brain, and, there's a book I love called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and she talks about in the book, she says, "Creative." I always think about this. Creative people need time to sit and do nothing, which I feel like is right along the lines. It's like, yes, we actually it's so in so many ways, having this rest, time to play, time to, be filled with beauty, be filled with, you know, like appreciating art, not just making it, as an artist, it's the same thing. It's so, so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rest
Wow.
is just such an important piece. And oftentimes, in the conversations that I have with lots of people, I have to let them know that rest should not be a reward. Right. So often we go, I'm just going to make it to the weekend. If I can make it to the weekend, if I can make it to, right. And then you may
Yeah.
never make it. So it's not
Right,
a reward.
right. Yes.
It really is the fuel for being your best self. So you've got to find
Mm,
those pockets,
yeah.
even if it's put in 5 minutes on your calendar to just go, nothing's going to be in that space. And I'm going to let whatever brings me joy at that moment to be what I fill that 5 minutes with. I
Yes.
promise you that you'll come back in a space that allows you to be your best self, right? And that to me is
Mhm.
ultimately what we all want to do, because that's where the magic happens, is when we're showing up as our best, most authentic, rested self.
Yes, it's so true. I love this, and I would love in our last couple minutes together if you have any thoughts on how this can apply to early career adults because, this podcast is really for Gen Z and wanting myself and fellow Gen Zs to learn how to build thriving lives and careers that we love that can in turn impact the world. And I'm just curious, like we said, we see a lot of people who are at the top of their field or who have gotten to work all these different jobs and then start their own business and, who are at a place where they're like, I figured out what I love, what I'm good at, and I can hone in on it and not do anything else. But many of us that's not the reality yet. We haven't figured those things out yet. So I'm just curious if, especially knowing what you know now versus when you were in your 20s, if there are any thoughts you have on how this can apply to, the first 5, 10 years of your career and anything you would recommend setting yourself up with.
100%. So the first piece is really self awareness. You want to start a self awareness journey. The
Yeah.
more you get to know yourself, and like I said, if I can be helpful with that through the assessment that I do with Core Strengths, or even if it's Clifton, even if it's just sitting with yourself and writing and
Mhm.
journaling, the first step, it would seem like that's wild as a career step, but it really is the case. Like, understanding yourself will allow you to understand what you do well, which will allow you to start leaning on those things in order to really start enjoying what you do better, right? That's the
Mhm.
first piece. The second piece that I think a lot of people are afraid to do is to start asking for the things that you like, right? Advocate for yourself.
Ooh.
Even if your job role is not the thing that you like and you see something else in your organization that you enjoy, it doesn't mean that you have to leave that job, but ask your supervisor, hey, can I have the opportunity to shadow this person? Or if you see something that you would enjoy, maybe it is orientation for other people and you want the opportunity to teach more and it's not happening, create that, right? So that
Mhm.
you get the opportunity, even if it's not in your role, to be able on your resume to say that you've had that experience
Yes.
and to talk to that experience when you're talking to people about what that next thing is. So to me, something I use constantly, especially right now in the entrepreneur space, is if I don't have it, I create it, right? In the way that I see that it's possible until the next big thing, till the investor, until the whoever comes and sees this and goes like, I want to take it to the next level. You do it for
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Mm.
Um, the last piece is really advocating for yourself. When I see people in the beginning of their career, they're usually very afraid to kind of go, this is not what I love, right?
Yeah.
Or how can I do this better? Or they're nervous about talking with their boss. And don't get me wrong, there are some horrible bosses out there. And it helps me make a lot of money because because I get to help teams and help managers really learn how to be better at
Help
it.
them not be horrible. Yeah.
Exactly. However, if you've got one that is invested in you, but just may not know how to do that, you are the only person who's going to advocate for yourself best,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
So, really start asking for the experiences that you want to do. If it's learning and development, I literally, one of the biggest pieces, core strengths that I talk about, it came from me advocating for myself. I
Wow.
use learning and development funds. I went to my boss at the time and said, this is a really cool assessment. I think it could be used, maybe not as much for students, which is not true. I really think it could be great for students. But at the time, I told her, I think it would be great for when we have conversations in the office for me to be able to use this. Is there any way that I can use my professional development funds to do this instead of something else? And she kind of said, Erin, I don't know. Like, give me a little more context of why. And I did. And she said, okay. And now I have grown a business based on that one yes for me
Yeah.
advocating for myself almost, oh my gosh, almost 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe 8 or 9. Oh my gosh, that makes me feel old. But whatever the case is, it was from me advocating for myself as someone who was a junior to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So your career is exactly that. It's yours. So you
Mm.
have to advocate in every capacity of the word for it. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean being disrespectful, right?
Right.
That
No.
means figuring out how to advocate for yourself. And a lot of times it means understanding yourself in order to be able to do that. And the final piece, even though it's super scary, especially right now in every economy, I think, no matter how you feel. But
Mhm.
sometimes, and I know you'll appreciate this a whole lot, Julia, sometimes you've got to pause and make a pivot.
Mhm.
I am not in the first industry that I started my career out in, if that makes sense. I'm not even in the third or fourth
Right.
industry that I've had a
Yeah.
career in. But one of the things that has really served me well and served me well as a young professional was that I was never afraid to move. I was never afraid to go, okay,
Yeah.
what I want something that will allow me to get to the next space that I'm trying to get to. So I was always very intentional about the things that I would learn from each role. So
Yes.
intentionality, not being afraid to pause, to pivot, to move to another city, to move to another state, to move to another country, whatever it is you need in order to move to that next piece. To understand rest is one of the greatest weapons that you'll ever have. And finally, self-awareness is the recipe that will allow you to ultimately meet at the where your roads will diverge or kind of come together, really, where
Yes.
calling and your talents kind of meet, if that makes
So
sense.
good.
Really having those two roads come together, that's exactly what self-awareness helps you to be able to do.
So good. Thank you. I'm literally thinking to myself, "Oh, I need to listen back to this." Like, as me, I'm like, "Oh, I can't wait to be a listener to this episode." Like,
That is what you always hope for. That even the
yes,
host
thank
says,
you.
"I want to listen back to this." That is the highest compliment ever.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, this was so wonderful. You're amazing. And yeah, I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. And I think this is going to be really encouraging to a lot of people. So thank you, Dr. Erin. And y'all can find
Thank
Dr.
you.
Erin at all of the things that I'm going to link below. I'll link your website, social media, your book, all the things. And y'all can all stay connected. And we will see you back next time. Bye, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in, friends. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Substack and Instagram, and send this episode to a friend who you know will love it. Don't forget to be present, dream big, and remember that you are shaping culture right where you are. We can't wait to see you back next week.